The pavement vibrated moments before the distinct whirring of rotors became audible. Then, the sky above Seattle General Hospital was dramatically torn asunder by the descent of 4 Black Hawk helicopters. They arrived in a formation typically reserved for active combat zones, not the mundane setting of a civilian hospital parking lot. A swirling cloud of dust obscured the terrified hospital security personnel who attempted to impede their landing. Their efforts were futile. A contingent of 12 Marines, fully outfitted in tactical gear and weapons at the ready, disembarked, disregarding the vocal protests of the chief surgeon. Their commanding officer bypassed protocol entirely. He didn't request to see the hospital director, nor did he ask for a physician. He strode directly to the apprehensive emergency room entrance and bellowed a single name, a name that instantly silenced the entire hospital staff. "We need Angel 6. Where in the hell is Angel 6? The linoleum floor of the emergency department at Seattle General Hospital was a specific shade of sterile gray, a hue intimately familiar to Clara Ara Halloway. She knew it intimately because she spent the majority of her 12-hour shifts gazing at it, her head bowed, attempting to make herself as inconspicuous as possible. To the accomplished trauma surgeons and the eager, unseasoned residents, Clara Ara was merely the slow nurse. She was the 40-year-old woman with a pronounced limp in her left leg, rendering her unable to respond quickly when a code blue was announced. Her duties were relegated to tasks such as changing bedpans, updating patient records, and attending to the non-critical individuals who were brought in for intoxication on Friday evenings. The reason for her limp remained unknown to them, and frankly, none possessed the curiosity to inquire. "Move it, Halloway. You're obstructing the corridor," Dr. Adrian Prescott barked, shouldering past her. Prescott was the hospital's preeminent trauma surgeon, a man of exceptional skill, striking good looks, and an utterly unbearable personality. His jawline was sharp enough to shave with, and his ego demanded its own postal code. Clara Ara faltered slightly, grasping the edge of the nurse's station for support. Her left leg, a limb held together by 3 titanium pins and an intricate network of scar tissue, throbbed with a dull, persistent ache. "Apologies, Doctor," she murmured, her voice hoarse. "Don't apologize. Be quicker," Prescott retorted over his shoulder, not breaking his stride. "We have a multi-vehicle collision arriving in 10 minutes. If you can't keep pace, consider transferring to geriatrics, or perhaps the morgue. They operate at a more leisurely speed down there." A few of the younger nurses exchanged nervous giggles. They idolized Prescott. To them, Clara was simply a fixture, a slightly damaged piece of hospital furniture that the administration had yet to replace. Clara Ara adjusted her scrubs and resumed organizing the supply cart. She did not allow the insults to wound her. She had endured far more intimidating verbal assaults from individuals than Adrian Prescott. She had been berated by drill instructors in the relentless rain of Paris Island and cursed at by wounded local commanders amidst the dust of Kandahar. Prescott's arrogance paled in comparison to the thunderous roar of a mortar shell. She kept this comparison to herself. Here, she was simply Clara Ara, not Lieutenant Commander, not Flight Nurse Halloway, and certainly not the call sign she had buried deep within her personnel file 7 years prior. "Hey, Clara Ara," Sarah, a kind but perpetually flustered junior nurse, whispered as she hurried past with a tray of IV bags. "Ignore him. He's just stressed. The board indicates a VIP is arriving with the crash victims. Some senator's child, I believe." "It's fine, Sarah," Clara replied softly, her gaze sweeping across the chaotic emergency room with an acuity that went unnoticed. While others perceived only noise and disarray, Clara discerned patterns. She recognized that Bed 4 was entering shock before the monitors even registered the change. She observed the intern in Bed 7 struggling with an intubation, yet she remained silent. She had learned through difficult experience that in the civilian medical world, a nurse with a limp was not expected to diagnose. Her role was to fetch blankets. The automatic doors slid open with a hiss, and paramedics wheeled in a gurney bearing a blood-covered teenager. "Male, 17, unrestrained driver, blunt force trauma to the chest," the paramedic announced. Prescott was immediately at the patient's side, issuing sharp commands. "Get him to Bay 1. I need a chest x-ray and a full panel stat. Stay clear. We require space to work." Clara retreated to the wall, her hands clasped behind her back. She observed Prescott's actions. He was competent, she had to concede. His hands were steady, but his arrogance was palpable. He was treating the injury, not the individual, and he was overlooking a critical detail. From her vantage point, Clara could discern the distension of the boy's neck veins. She noted the uneven rise of his chest. The monitor indicated a declining blood pressure, yet his heart rate was not elevated to the extent expected for hypovolemic shock. Cardiac tamponade, Clara's mind whispered, or tension pneumothorax on the right side. The breath sounds will be diminished. She took a half step forward. "Doctor," she stated, her voice low but firm, "check his right lung sounds. The trachea is deviating slightly." Prescott spun around, his face flushed with adrenaline and indignation. "Excuse me. Did I solicit a consultation from the cheap seats? I am the attending physician here, Holloway. I am well aware of what a collapsed lung entails, and this is not it. Fetch me 2 units of O-negative blood and cease your commentary." Clara pressed her lips together. She saw the intern, a young man named Davis, glance at her with a look of pity. They all assumed she was attempting to play doctor. She turned and limped towards the blood bank, her fists clenched at her sides. The phantom pain in her leg flared, a stark reminder of the night she had sustained that injury. It was the night she had been suspended upside down in a burning aircraft fuselage, her one hand maintaining the life of a Marine sergeant while her other hand was used to tourniquet her own shattered thigh. She retrieved the blood bags, a habit ingrained from years of service, meticulously checking the labels 3 times. Upon her return to the trauma bay, the situation had escalated dramatically. The boy was deteriorating rapidly. "BP is 60/40, Davis shouted. "We're losing him. Push epinephrine," Prescott roared. "Where is that blood? Holloway, move it!" Clara handed off the blood, her gaze fixed once more on the patient's chest. The situation had worsened. The tracheal deviation was now visibly apparent. If Prescott did not perform a chest decompression within the next 60 seconds, the boy would not survive. "He requires a needle decompression," Clara announced, her voice louder this time. "Right second intercostal space now." The room fell silent for a fraction of a second. Prescott threw his stethoscope onto the tray with a clatter. He approached Clara, encroaching on her personal space, looming over her. "Get out!" he hissed. "Get out of my trauma bay. You are relieved of duty. Leave before I have security escort you out." Clara met his gaze directly. For a fleeting moment, the persona of the slow nurse vanished, and a steely, dangerous flicker appeared in her eyes. Then she blinked, and it was gone. "Yes, doctor," she said. She turned and limped away, the sound of her uneven gait echoing beneath the insistent beeping of the alarms. She walked towards the break room, her heart pounding, not with apprehension, but with profound frustration. She knew the boy was going to crash, and she knew Prescott would not recognize it until it was too late. She was in the process of pouring herself a cup of stale coffee when the ground began to shake. It was not an earthquake. It was a vibration that rattled the mugs on the shelf, a deep, resonant thumping that she felt in her bones before she registered it audibly. Thwop. Clara froze. She recognized that sound. Every fiber of her being recognized that sound. It was the harbinger of both salvation and destruction. Rotors. Heavy lift. She moved to the break room window, which offered a view of the parking lot. Her eyes widened. Approaching from the south, flying low and fast over the Seattle skyline, were 4 dark silhouettes. Not the familiar red and white markings of medevac choppers. These were matte black and olive drab. Military. The hospital's PA system crackled to life, the receptionist's voice trembling. "Security to the main entrance. We have unauthorized aircraft landing in the parking lot. Repeat, unauthorized landing." In the ER, the panic shifted from the dying boy to the windows. Patients and nurses alike crowded the glass. "Is it a terrorist attack?" someone shrieked. "No!" Dr. Prescott shouted, attempting to reassert control over his department. "It's likely a drill that's gone awry. Ignore it. Focus on the patients." But it was impossible to ignore. The roar was now deafening. The lead helicopter, a UH-60 Blackhawk bearing no markings other than a drab gray serial number, flared aggressively over the rows of parked cars. The downdraft from its rotors sent a compact car skidding sideways. Clara Ara watched from the break room, her forgotten coffee growing cold. She pressed her hand against the glass. What are they doing here? She thought. This isn't a designated landing zone. They're coming in hot. She observed as the lead chopper touched down, its wheels barely kissing the asphalt before the side doors swung open. They did not wait for the rotors to decelerate. Marines spilled out. Clara Ara counted them instantly. 12, all equipped with full tactical gear, plate carriers, M4 carbines, drop holsters, and fast helmets with integrated communications. This was not a National Guard transport. This was a rapid response force. She squinted, recognizing the unit insignia on their shoulders, albeit velcroed on and rendered in dark gray on black. A dagger piercing a globe. Force Recon. Oh, God, Clara Ara whispered. The second and third choppers landed in a tight formation, effectively blocking the ambulance bay. The fourth helicopter hovered overhead, providing overwatch, its sniper peering out the open door. The ER doors burst open, but it was not patients entering. It was the hospital's security guard, an elderly man named Frank, backing away with his hands raised. "I couldn't stop them!" Frank yelled. "They have weapons!" Behind him, the double doors were kicked open with such force that one of them detached from its hinges. 3 Marines entered first, sweeping the room with their rifles. They did not aim at the civilians, but their discipline was terrifyingly precise. They moved with the fluidity of water, navigating around gurneys and instilling a chilling calm in the room with their presence. "Everyone remain precisely where you are," the lead Marine commanded. His voice, amplified by a tactical throat microphone, boomed through the small speaker on his vest. Hands visible, no sudden movements. Dr. Prescott emerged from the trauma bay, his gloves still stained with the teenager's blood. His usual arrogance, typically his shield, was now a clear vulnerability. "Who do you people think you are?" Prescott demanded, marching towards the armed servicemen. "This is a hospital. You cannot barge in here with weapons. I have a patient who is critically ill in there." The lead Marine did not flinch. He was a towering figure, easily 6 feet 4 inches tall, with a scar bisecting his eyebrow. He simply stepped forward and pushed Prescott back with one hand. It was not a violent shove, merely the dismissive movement of an obstacle. Prescott stumbled back 5 feet, gasping. "I am Captain Silas Thorne, United States Marine Corps," the giant boomed. "And I am not here for your patient, Doctor. I am here for my soldier." "Your soldier?" Prescott sputtered, his face turning a deep shade of purple. "We have no military admissions today. You have the wrong hospital." Captain Thorne ignored him. He reached up and keyed his radio. "Command, we have secured the lobby. Scanning for asset." He withdrew a folded piece of paper from his tactical vest and unfolded it. He scanned the room, his eyes moving over the terrified faces of the nurses and doctors. "I am searching for a former service member," Thorne announced, his voice echoing off the tiled walls. "We have intelligence indicating she is employed at this facility. We require her immediate assistance. This is a matter of national security." The room was deathly silent. "Who?" Prescott asked, his voice trembling slightly. "Who are you looking for?" Thorne looked at the paper, then back at the room. "Her name is Clara Ara Halloway, but within the Corps, she was known as Angel 6. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Heads, slowly, agonizingly, turned towards the rear of the nurse's station, towards the break room door. Dr. Prescott looked utterly bewildered. "Halloway? The janitor nurse?" He let out a breathless, disbelieving laugh. "You're joking. You landed 4 helicopters for the woman who empties bedpans?" Thorne's eyes narrowed. He took a step towards Prescott, and the air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Watch your tone, civilian. You are speaking about a recipient of the Navy Cross." The ensuing silence was absolute. Clara Ara stood in the break room doorway. She had heard everything. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She had not heard that call sign in years. Angel 6. She smoothed her scrubs. She took a deep breath. She did not want this. She had spent 7 years evading this. But she recognized the look on Captain Thorne's face. She knew that stance. They were not here for a friendly reunion. Someone was in trouble. Serious trouble. Clara Aura pushed the door open. The squeak of the hinge sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. "I'm here," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Every head turned. Dr. Prescott stared at her, his mouth agape. The young intern, Davis, looked from the Marines to Clara Aura and back again. Captain Thorne turned. When he saw her, the hard lines of his face softened for a mere fraction of a second. He saw the streaks of gray in her hair, the tired lines around her eyes, and he saw the way she favored her left leg. But he did not see a broken woman. He snapped to attention. His boots slammed together with a crack that made the triage nurse jump. He raised his hand in a crisp, sharp salute. "Ma'am," Thorne said, his voice respectful. "Captain Thorne, 1st Recon. We require your assistance. We have a catastrophic situation in the field, and the flight surgeon is down. We have a mass casualty event involving a covert unit 30 miles north. They are trapped in a ravine. We cannot insert a medevac, but we can hover a bird." He lowered his hand. "We need a flight nurse who is combat certified for high-angle rescue. We've checked the database. You are the only one in the tri-state area with that rating." Clara Aura stared at him. "Captain, I haven't flown in 7 years. My leg—" "We don't need your legs, ma'am," Thorne stated intensely. "We need your hands, and we need your brain. There are 7 Marines bleeding out on a mountain right now. One of them is the General's son. They specifically asked for you." "Asked for me?" Clara Aura whispered. "No," Thorne corrected himself. "The pinned-down unit. They didn't ask for a nurse. They radioed that they wouldn't let anyone touch them except Angel 6. They said you served with their outfit in Fallujah." Clara Aura's breath hitched. "Fallujah. Is it?" She started, her voice trembling. "Is it Commander Ricks?" Thorne nodded grimly. "It is, and he's critical." Clara Aura didn't hesitate any longer. The slow nurse evaporated. The woman who apologized for her existence was gone. In her place stood Angel 6. She looked at Thorne. "My kit is at my apartment." "We have a full trauma kit on the bird," Thorne assured her. "We leave in 2 minutes." Clara Aura nodded. She took a step forward, her limp pronounced but her movement purposeful. "Holloway!" Prescott shouted, finally finding his voice. "You cannot leave! You are on shift! If you walk out those doors, you are fired! Do you hear me? Fired!" Clara Aura stopped. She turned slowly to face Dr. Prescott. She looked at the man who had belittled her for 2 years, the man who had mocked her pain and ignored her skills. She walked up to him. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her hospital ID badge, and dropped it into the front pocket of his pristine white lab coat. "Dr. Prescott," she said, her voice cool and commanding, "that boy in Bay 1 has tension pneumothorax. Needle decompress him now, or you will be explaining to his senator father why he died. And as for firing me," she smiled a cold, sharp smile, "I resign." She turned to Captain Thorne. "Let's go." The interior of the MH-60M Blackhawk was a sensory assault of noise, vibration, and the overwhelming scent of JP-8 jet fuel, a fragrance that acted as a time machine for Clara. The moment the side doors slid shut and the bird banked hard to the left, leaving the Seattle skyline behind, the hospital ceased to exist. Dr. Prescott, the rude interns, the sterile gray floors, they were a lifetime away. Captain Thorne handed Clara Aura a headset. She pulled it over her ears, the active noise cancellation instantly dampening the roar of the rotors to a dull hum. He then pointed to a duffel bag secured to the floor webbing near her feet. "We brought your old loadout," Thorne said, his voice crackling over the intercom. "Standard issue flight suit, boots, and a Tier 2 trauma bag. Ricks kept it. He said you'd be back one day." Clara Aura looked at the bag, a lump forming in her throat. Commander Ricks, the man currently bleeding out on a mountain, had kept her gear for 7 years. She unbuckled her seatbelt, a violation of safety protocol that Thorne ignored, and began to strip off her blue hospital scrubs. She didn't care about modesty. She was in a fuselage full of Marines, and to them, she was just another piece of essential equipment, like a rifle or a radio. She pulled on the flight suit. It was a little loose. She had lost muscle mass since her discharge, but the familiar weight of the fabric felt like armor. She laced up the tactical boots, wincing as she tightened the left one over the scar tissue of her ankle. The pain was sharp, a jagged reminder of why she had left the service. But she shoved it into a mental box and locked the lid. "Sit rep, Captain," Clara Ara said, plugging her comms into the wall jack. Her voice had changed. The raspy, apologetic tone of Nurse Halloway was gone, replaced by the clipped, authoritative cadence of Lieutenant Commander Halloway. Thorne nodded, appreciating the shift. He pulled a tablet from his vest and passed it to her. "Training exercise in the North Cascades," Thorne explained, his face grim. "Unit was 1st Recon, engaging in high-altitude survival and evasion. But something went wrong. We lost comms with them 4 hours ago. When we finally re-established contact, the radio operator was frantic. They took fire." Clara Ara looked up from the map on the tablet. "Fire in the Cascades? It's a training op." "That's the twist," Thorne said darkly. "They stumbled onto something they weren't supposed to see. Illegal grow-op, drug runners, maybe something worse. We don't have eyes on the hostiles, but they are heavily armed. They shot down the extraction bird, an osprey. It went down hard in a box canyon known as the Devil's Throat. The terrain is too steep for us to land. We have to hover and winch you down." Clara Ara studied the topography map. The contour lines were stacked on top of each other. It was a vertical nightmare. "Casualties. 7 confirmed on the ground, 3 critical. Commander Rix took a round to the abdomen and has shrapnel from the crash in his neck. The corpsman is dead. RX is the highest-ranking officer on the ground, but he's incapacitated. The one calling the shots right now is a lance corporal named Sterling." Thorne paused. "Sterling is General Sterling's son. The kid is green. He's panicking and he's screaming for Angel 6 because his father told him stories about you." Clara Ara closed her eyes for a second. The general's son. That explained the 4 helicopters. Politics always bled into warfare. But Rix was family. "How long until we're on station?" 6 minutes, the pilot's voice cut in. "Weather is deteriorating. We have a blizzard front moving in from the north. Visibility is dropping to 0. If we don't drop you in the next 10 minutes, we scrub the mission." Clara Ara looked out the small porthole window. The lush green of the Seattle suburbs had given way to the jagged, snow-capped teeth of the Cascade Mountains. Gray clouds were swirling around the peaks like sharks circling a kill. She felt the old fear clawing at her stomach. The last time she had been in a helicopter over hostile terrain, she hadn't walked away. She had crawled. Flashback, Kandahar, 2018. The night was hot, smelling of sulfur and rot. The RPG had come out of nowhere, hitting the tail rotor. The spin had been nauseating. The impact shattered her world and her leg. She recalled the dizzying sensation of being inverted, the rush of blood to her skull, observing Rix extricate the pilot from the inferno of the crashed aircraft. He had returned for her. He had transported her for 3 miles despite a fractured spine. He had preserved her existence. "Ma'am?" Thorne's voice abruptly pulled her from her reverie. Clara Ara met his gaze, her digits exhibiting a faint tremor. She bowled them into resolute fists. "I'm all right," she fibbed. Reaching into her gear sack, she withdrew a more compact receptacle. Within resided her individual medical provisions: tracheal tubes, trauma dressings, thoracic sealants, and a robust dosage of potent pain relief. She rolled up the cuff of her aviation suit, exposing the inscription on her inner forearm. It was diminished with age, yet the markings remained discernible. A pair of stylized wings encircling the numeral 6, accompanied by the Latin adage, "No, Tim, be not afraid." Thorne noticed it. He tapped his own sternum. "The soldiers on the ground, they believe you are a fabrication. You know, the Phantom of Kandahar. Rix kept your legend alive. Legends don't cease to bleed, Captain," Clara Ara murmured, attending to the seal on a bag of intravenous fluid. "Tourniquets do." 2 minutes, the pilot's voice boomed. "We are sustaining projectile impacts. I reiterate, sustaining fire." The rotorcraft bucked violently starboard. A percussive din, akin to precipitation hammering a metal canopy, erupted across the hull, rounds impacting the ballistic protection. "Secure an arm!" Thorne bellowed, manipulating the bolt of his rifle. The other servicemen within the cabin instantly transitioned from passive occupants to lethal combatants. Clara Ara grasped a suspension strap. The engine's resonance altered. The aircraft was decelerating, entering a hover. The side-mounted gunner on the right flank unleashed a torrent of fire from the minigun, its deafening roar rattling Clara Ara's dental work. "We are above the designated landing zone," the crew chief shouted, sliding open the side portal. A blast of frigid air and snow inundated the interior, instantly expelling all warmth. Clara Ara peered downward. Through the swirling precipitation, she discerned the fractured remains of the Osprey, a contorted metal skeleton emitting smoke in the chasm. Tracer rounds zipped back and forth between the tree line and the impact site. "It is excessively perilous to descend," the pilot roared. "We must execute a rapid insertion via rope. You are designated to proceed first. Lingering here means certain demise." Clara Ara unfastened her safety harness. She secured her medical apparatus. She hobbled to the edge of the open aperture and surveyed the drop. It was a 60-foot descent into a combat zone. Her compromised limb throbbed in anticipation. Thorne grasped her shoulder harness. "Are you certain about this, Angel?" Clara Ara surveyed the scene of devastation below. She observed a silhouette brandishing a strobe light. Rix. She lowered her protective eyewear over her eyes. "Send me." The descent cable abraded her gloves, the friction generating a heat that countered the biting chill of the alpine atmosphere. Clara descended rapidly, perhaps too rapidly. The tactical descent protocol was engineered for vigorous young men with sound knees, not 40-year-old women stabilized by titanium rods within their tibias. However, adrenaline acts as a potent analgesic. Clara fixed her attention on the terrain, hurtling upwards to meet her. 30 feet, 20, 10. She extended her legs, endeavoring to land on her sound side. But the uneven topography of the ravine had other intentions. She encountered a patch of loose scree, causing her compromised leg to collapse beneath the weight of the trauma pack. A searing bolt of agony shot up her vertebral column, momentarily blinding her. She gasped, biting her lip with such force that she tasted metallic blood. Move. You must move. Projectiles pinged off the rocks mere inches from her cranium. The marksman in the tree line had registered the insertion. "Suppression!" a voice bellowed from the wreckage. 3 servicemen from the crash site emerged from behind the mangled fuselage of the Osprey and unleashed a barrage of ordnance toward the arboreal cover. It afforded Clara the 3 seconds she required. She scrambled on hands and knees, dragging the cumbersome medical satchel through the mire and snow, diving for the sanctuary offered by the Osprey's landing gear. She was immediately enveloped by the pungent odor of burnt hydraulic fluid and the acrid tang of sanguineous fluid. "You made it." A youthful Marine, his visage smudged with camouflage paint and grime, seized her vest and hauled her deeper into concealment. He appeared barely 20 years of age. His eyes were wide, his pupils dilated with sheer terror. "I am Corporal Sterling. Father predicted your arrival?" Clara Ara seized his collar, drawing him close to be heard above the cacophony of the gunship overhead. "Where is Commander Rix? Escort me to him immediately." "He is within the fuselage. He is severely injured, ma'am." "Critically so." Sterling guided her further into the fractured craft. The interior presented a horrific tableau. The crimson emergency illumination flickered erratically, casting disquieting shadows across the carnage. 4 servicemen maintained defensive postures at the jagged apertures of the hull. Centrally positioned, resting upon a thermal blanket, lay Commander David Rix. Clara Ara knelt beside him. He appeared older than her recollection. His hair was now silver, his complexion the hue of damp ash. A makeshift dressing was applied to his cervical region, saturated with vibrant arterial blood. Another bandage encircled his abdominal area. "Dave," Clara Ara whispered, her digits already in motion, securing blue nitrile gloves. Rick's eyes fluttered open. They were clouded, unfocused. He blinked, attempting to dissipate the haze of shock. Upon perceiving her, a faint, wry smile touched his lips. "Clara," he rasped, a slight effervescence of blood at the commissure of his mouth. "You disregarded my direct directive to remain retired. I was never adept at adhering to directives. she stated, her voice unwavering amidst the pandemonium. She gently peeled back the cervical dressing. It was a ragged abrasion, narrowly missing the carotid artery by millimeters, yet grazing the jugular vein. He was hemorrhaging rapidly, but the situation was manageable. The abdominal injury, however, posed the gravest threat. "Sterling, apply pressure here," Clara commanded, guiding the young corporal's hands to the cervical wound. "Maintain constant pressure. If he succumbs to exsanguination, the responsibility is yours." She slid open Rick's tunic, a singular projectile entry wound, positioned just below the ribs, no exit trajectory. This indicated the projectile was ricocheting internally, inflicting damage to organs. His abdomen was distended, indicative of internal hemorrhaging. "Pressure is 70/40, a nearby serviceman whose arm was shattered announced, consulting a portable monitoring device. "He is deteriorating, Mom. I require fluid," Clara ordered. "Initiate an intravenous line, 18 gauge, wide open." Abruptly, the hull of the Osprey resounded like a struck bell. Clang. An RPG had impacted the nose of the aircraft, merely 10 feet distant. Dust and debris rained down upon them. "They are flanking us!" Sterling shouted, relinquishing his grip on Rick's neck to retrieve his rifle. "They are advancing along the ridge. Maintain pressure on the critical wound!" Clara bellowed, shoving him back towards it. "Allow the Force Reconnaissance Unit to engage in combat. Your sole responsibility is to act as a barricade. Remain immobile." Rick's hand grasped Clara's wrist. His grip possessed surprising strength for an individual in extremis. "Clara, listen to me," he wheezed. "The laptop in the cockpit. You must obliterate it." "Not now, Dave," she responded, administering morphine via his intravenous line. "No." He attempted to sit up, emitting a groan of pain. "It is not illicit narcotics traffickers. They are professional combatants. Black operations. They seek the data storage device. It contains the positional coordinates for the prototype." Clara paused for a fleeting instant. The narrative of the training exercise began to unravel. "If they secure it," Rix coughed violently, "they will eliminate all witnesses to conceal their actions. You must safeguard the youth. Sterling, extract him. Abandon me." "I will not abandon you," Clara declared, her voice imbued with fierce resolve. She leaned close to his ear. "I departed a shift with Adrian Prescott to be here. I am not departing empty-handed. You're going to survive, Dave, even if I am compelled to carry you out myself." "Incoming!" someone shouted. The world detonated. A mortar round impacted just outside the open hatch. The concussive wave propelled Clara against the bulkhead. Her cranium struck the metallic surface, and her vision momentarily succumbed to darkness. She shook her head, battling the ringing in her ears. She looked up. Sterling lay dazed on the deck. Rix was unconscious. Standing at the breach in the hull, silhouetted against the snow and the muzzle flashes, were 3 figures. They were not clad in the motley attire of drug traffickers. They wore high-end tactical equipment, night vision goggles, and wielded suppressed vector submachine guns. Mercenaries, professionals. One of them raised his weapon, aiming directly at the unconscious general's son. Clara did not deliberate. She did not analyze. The ingrained reflexes from 1,000 simulations took precedence. She was unarmed. Her medical status theoretically afforded her protection, yet these individuals evinced no regard for the Geneva Conventions. She seized the sole implement within her reach, a flare gun from the emergency survival kit affixed to the wall. She raised it and depressed the trigger. The flare struck the lead mercenary squarely in the chest plate. It did not penetrate, but the phosphorus ignited with a blinding white intensity, burning at 3,000 degrees. The man screamed, dropping his weapon and writhing as the flames consumed his vest. The other 2 mercenaries recoiled, blinded by the sudden magnesium glare impairing their night vision goggles. "Clear the aperture!" Clara shrieked. Captain Thorne descended from the ceiling hatch, repelling like a vengeful deity. He landed upon the second mercenary, his combat knife gleaming. The rescue contingent had arrived, but Rick's heart rhythm was faltering. "I require illumination!" "Someone provide me with illumination," Clara cried. The engagement had spilled beyond the confines of the fuselage. Thorne and his reconnaissance team were repelling the mercenaries back up the incline, creating a localized zone of security for her. However, within the wreckage, the conflict was biological. Rick's cardiac function had ceased. "Initiating compressions," Sterling yelled, finally summoning his resolve. He began depressing Rick's chest. "Too rapid. Decelerate," Clara Ara corrected him. "Allow the chest to fully recoil." She scrambled towards her kit. She needed to perform a thoracotomy to expose his chest cavity to ligate the aorta and arrest the abdominal hemorrhage sufficiently to facilitate his transport to a medical facility. Yet, undertaking such a procedure within a frozen, contaminated helicopter wreck bordered on lunacy. It was tantamount to self-destruction. "He will perish if you do not," her internal voice whispered. "Procure the scalpel," Clara ordered the serviceman with the fractured arm, "and the antiseptic solution. Apply it liberally." She tore away the remainder of Rick's tunic. "What are you doing?" Sterling inquired, breathless from the cardiopulmonary resuscitation. "I am going to ligate his aorta," Clara Ara stated calmly. "Cease compressions." "He has no pulse." "Precisely. That is the reason for this intervention." She made the incision. A lengthy, vertical aperture down the midline of his chest. No blood flowed. His blood pressure registered 0. She employed a rib retractor from the heavy rescue kit to fracture the sternum. The sound of bone fracturing caused Sterling to recoil, yet he maintained the flashlight beam steady. Clara reached into the thoracic cavity of the man she had cherished as a brother for 20 years. Her hands felt warm within his corporeal form, a stark contrast to the frigid gusts howling outside. She located the descending aorta. She occluded it with her digits, pressing it against the vertebral column. "Epinephrine! 1 milligram!" she shouted. The serviceman with the fractured arm fumbled with the syringe and administered it intravenously. Clara Ara compressed the heart manually. Once, twice, 3 times. It felt like a lifeless avian creature within her grasp, utterly flaccid. "Come, Dave," she implored. "Do not succumb to demise. Not here. Not amidst the snow." She squeezed again. Thump. A faint flutter against her palm. "I have a rhythm," she declared. "Proceed." Thump. Thump. The cardiac muscle began to beat independently, laboriously, erratically, but beating nonetheless. By occluding the aorta, she had diverted all available blood supply to his brain and heart, temporarily sacrificing the lower extremities. "Pulse has returned," the serviceman exclaimed. "Weak, but discernible. We must initiate evacuation," Clara Ara stated, retracting her hand, yet maintaining the clamp in situ with a pair of surgical forceps. "Delay, and he will succumb to hypothermia." She activated her headset. "Thorne, status. Hostiles are withdrawing, but they are preparing for a significant offensive." Thorne's voice was strained. "We have a 3-minute window before they deploy a 50 caliber weapon. Is the asset prepared for transport?" "Asset is critical but stable," Clara responded. "We require immediate hoist extraction." "The atmospheric conditions are 0 visibility, Angel," the pilot interjected. "I cannot discern the landing deck." "Follow my vocal guidance," Clara Ara shouted. "I am deploying green smoke." She retrieved a smoke canister and hurled it out the rear hatch. Dense green smoke billowed outward instantaneously, dispersed by the wind, yet sufficiently visible. The roar of the Black Hawk intensified. The downdraft nearly toppled them. The extraction basket was lowered. "Secure him within," Clara ordered. They loaded Rix into the rescue basket. It was a clumsy, desperate maneuver. Clara had to jog alongside the basket as they dragged it, monitoring the clamp protruding from his chest. As the basket ascended from the ground, a projectile ricocheted off the metal railing. "Go, go, go!" Thorne screamed, unleashing suppressive fire with his automatic weapon. Clara attached her own carabiner to the hoist cable above the basket. She would not ascend separately. She needed to observe Rick's condition with every passing second of the ascent. They lifted off, swaying erratically in the wind. Clara wrapped her legs around the basket's frame, shielding Rick's exposed chest with her own body. Below them, the ravine shimmered with tracer fire. Above them, the dark underside of the helicopter promised sanctuary. But as they reached the midpoint, 50 feet in the air, the winch mechanism seized. They stopped abruptly, suspended in the void. "Seized!" the crew chief shouted over the communications. "Hydraulic malfunction on the secondary winch. I cannot elevate you." Clara peered downward. The mercenaries were emerging from the trees. They were observing upward. They were defenseless targets. "Manual crank?" the pilot yelled. "Who is designated for manual cranking?" "It will require 4 minutes," the chief responded. "We do not have 5 minutes." Thorne's voice interjected from ground level. "They are deploying a rocket-propelled grenade. You are the objective." Clara gazed at Rix. His eyes were open once more. He was looking at her. "Sever the line," he whispered. "Preserve your own life." Clara looked at the cable. She looked at the open door of the helicopter above where the crew chief was frantically manipulating a lever. She looked down at the individuals aiming the RPG. She reached into her vest and retrieved her sidearm, a standard-issue M9 Beretta she had been issued on board. She had no intention of severing the line. She aimed downward at the dark silhouette of the RPG gunner in the snow 50 feet below. She inhaled deeply, synchronizing her aim with the sway of the cable. "No, Tim," she uttered. She fired. The Beretta's recoil kicked against Clara's palm. A jarring report echoed through the frigid air. 50 feet below, the mercenary sighting the RPG collapsed into the snow. The unguided projectile launched harmlessly into the sky, detonating against the canyon wall in a shower of futile sparks. "Clear! We are clear!" Clara shrieked into her headset, though the wind snatched the words away. The manual winch groaned, a terrible metallic screeching that vibrated down the steel cable and into her bones. Inch by excruciating inch, the basket ascended. Clara maintained her legs tightly wrapped around the frame, her body serving as a human shield against the biting wind and any stray projectiles from below. Her gaze, however, remained fixed on Commander Rick's chest. The aortic clamp was shifting. The vibrations of the ascent were dislodging the surgical instrument. If it detached, Rick would bleed out in seconds, his heart pumping his remaining life into the thoracic cavity she had just painstakingly opened. "Steady!" Clara yelled at the crew chief as her head cleared the floor of the Black Hawk. "Do not jerk it." Strong hands grasped her tactical vest. Captain Thorne and the crew chief hauled the basket into the cabin with a heave that nearly dislocated her shoulder. They slid the basket across the diamond-plated floor, securing it instantly. "Pilot, extricate us from here," Thorne roared. "Nap of the earth. Maintain a low altitude." The Black Hawk banked sharply, diving over the ridgeline to escape the kill zone. The G-force pressed Clara into the floor, but she did not release the clamp. "I require illumination," she barked. "He is exhibiting fibrillation again." The cabin was bathed in the crimson glow of tactical lights. It was a nightmarish operating theater. The helicopter shuddered, atmospheric pressure fluctuated, and the patient was technically deceased, kept alive solely by a piece of steel constricting a major artery. Corporal Sterling, the general's son, huddled in a corner, observing Clara with wide, terrified eyes. He had just witnessed a middle-aged medic with a limp rappel down a rope, perform open-chest surgery within a wrecked aircraft, and shoot a man from a suspended cable. Is he? Is he going to survive?" Sterling stammered. "Hold this IV bag," Clara ordered, disregarding the question. "Squeeze it. Every time I nod, you squeeze. Do you comprehend?" "Yes, ma'am." Clara glanced at the monitor. Rick's vital signs were erratic. She needed to stabilize the clamp and pack the chest cavity. "Thorne, establish communication with the receiving hospital," Clara stated, her hands deep within the chest cavity, adjusting the packing gauze. "We are not proceeding to the base. He will not survive the flight to Madigan. We must divert to Seattle." "General negative, Angel," Thorne replied, listening to his earpiece. "Command asserts the package is too sensitive. The laptop, the data. We cannot transport that into a civilian sector." Clara looked up, her face streaked with grease and blood. Her eyes blazed with fury. "I am unconcerned with the laptop, Captain. I am concerned with the man who preserved my life in Kandahar. He has a clamped aorta and a tension pneumothorax. Seattle General is 6 minutes distant. Madigan is 20. If we fly to the base, you will be landing with a deceased individual. Do you wish to explain to General Sterling why his son's savior perished?" Due to protocol? Thorne hesitated. He observed Rix, then Clara Ara. He recognized the fire in her eyes, the same fire that had earned her the Navy Cross. He activated his radio. Command, this is Dagger 11. We are declaring a medical emergency. Diverting to Seattle General. Pilot, initiate immediate departure. Copy that, the pilot responded, the engines whining as he advanced the throttle to its maximum setting. Clara Ara refocused on the wound. Remain with me, Dave. We are nearly home. The flight was a chaotic blur of alarms and desperate interventions. On 2 occasions, Rick's blood pressure plummeted. Twice, Clara Ara was compelled to manually massage his heart, her hand rhythmically pumping life through his veins, while the Marines observed in reverent silence. As the Seattle skyline came into view, the hospital helipad was already illuminated. However, as they approached, Clara Ara observed something that ignited her ire. The helipad was devoid of medical personnel. Security personnel were obstructing the access points. They are not prepared for our arrival, Clara Ara realized. Prescott has prevented the landing. He what? Thorne growled. Dr. Prescott, he is the trauma chief. He likely believes this is a ruse. Thorne racked the slide of his rifle. Set us down, pilot. If anyone obstructs her path, I will remove them. The Black Hawk flared over the hospital roof, the rotor wash churning up debris. The landing gear impacted the painted designation with a thud. Before the rotors had even decelerated, Thorne kicked the door open. He disembarked, his weapon held low, but ready, his team fanning out to secure the perimeter. The hospital security personnel who had been ordered to deny access took one look at the Force Recon Marines and retreated, their hands raised. Clara Ara unbuckled. She grasped the side of the gurney. Let's move. On my signal. 1, 2, 3. They rushed Rix out of the chopper. The wind howled, whipping Clara Ara's hair across her face. She limped heavily, her compromised legs screaming in protest, but she did not falter. She ran alongside the gurney, her hand still securing the clamp within Rick's chest. They burst through the roof access doors and into the trauma elevator. Trauma Bay 1, Clara Ara commanded, and page Dr. Prescott. Inform him that if he is not present within 30 seconds, I will perform the surgery myself. The elevator doors chimed open on the emergency room floor, revealing a scene of utter pandemonium. The staff had heard the helicopter, but no one comprehended the unfolding events. Lieutenant Commander Clara Holloway erupted into the hallway, flanked by 4 heavily armed Marines, pushing a gurney carrying a man whose chest cavity was disturbingly exposed. The entire floor seemed to halt in its tracks. Dr. Adrian Prescott, holding a coffee cup in mid-laugh with a resident at the nurse's station, turned. His smile vanished instantly. He saw Clara Ara, but this was not the Clara Ara he recognized. She was clad in a mud and blood-splattered flight suit, her hair a disheveled mess. She moved with a palpable, frightening intensity. The slight limp in her gait now resembled the purposeful stride of a wounded predator rather than a weakness. "Get out of my way!" Clara Ara's voice boomed, echoing down the corridor. "Hello," Prescott stammered, fumbling his coffee cup. It shattered on the linoleum, splattering hot liquid onto his pristine white shoes. "What in blazes is going on? You resigned. You can't just..." "The patient is male. 52 years old. Gunshot wound to the abdomen, penetrating trauma to the neck, emergency thoracotomy performed in the field." Clara rattled off the critical details with the precision of a seasoned orator as she propelled the gurney past him. "Aorta is clamped. I need the OR prepped immediately. Type and cross-match for 10 units of O negative. Get the vascular team." She didn't pause for permission, nor did she glance down. She steered the gurney directly into Trauma Bay 1. Prescott, his face flushed with outrage, hurried after them. "Security! Stop her! She's practicing medicine without a license. She's a nurse." He reached out to grasp Clara's arm as she expertly transferred the patient, Commander Rix, to the hospital bed. Before his fingers could brush her flight suit, Captain Thorne intervened. The imposing Marine didn't raise his voice. He simply placed a gloved hand on Prescott's chest and pushed him back against the wall with enough force to leave him gasping for air. "Touch her again," Thorne stated, his voice dropping to a low, resonant growl, "and you'll be needing a trauma surgeon yourself." "This is my hospital," Prescott wheezed. "And that," Thorne retorted, "is my commanding officer on that table, and she is the sole reason he is still breathing. You will take orders from her, or you will stand down." Prescott surveyed the scene. The entire emergency room staff, including Sarah Davis and the other nurses and orderlies, were watching. Their gazes weren't fixed on Prescott with their usual blend of apprehension or admiration. Their eyes were on Clara Ara. They were observing the woman they had largely overlooked for years, now commanding a cadre of Special Forces soldiers. "Dr. Prescott," Clara Ara said, her attention fixed on connecting Rix's vital signs to the hospital monitors, "I require a vascular surgeon to repair the aorta. Are you going to scrub in, or do I need to summon someone competent?" The insult hung in the air, sharp and undeniably brutal. Prescott swallowed his considerable pride. He observed the open chest, the clamp in place. He grasped with a growing sense of unease the extraordinary level of skill required to perform such a procedure within the confines of a hovering helicopter. He looked at Clarara's hands. They were remarkably steady. "I'll scrub in," Prescott muttered. "Good," Clarara replied. "But I am leading this. You will repair the vessel. I will manage the patient. That's highly irregular. Do it." The subsequent 4 hours passed in a dizzying rush. Clarara remained in the operating room, stationed at the head of the table, overseeing anesthesia, directing the administration of blood products, and guiding Prescott's hands when his residual arrogance led to sloppy technique. For the first time in his distinguished career, Adrian Prescott found himself in the role of an assistant. Once the final suture was secured and Rix was safely transferred to the intensive care unit, stable, Clara Ara finally stepped back. She peeled off the blood-soaked gloves, her adrenaline surge giving way to exhaustion. Her leg faltered and she stumbled, but she didn't fall. Captain Thorne caught her. "I've got you, Angel," he said softly. Together they guided her from the operating room into the waiting area. The room was filled, not with patients, but with an assembly of military personnel. General Sterling, the father of the Marine Corporal Clara Ara had previously saved, was present. He was a formidable figure, his shoulders adorned with 4 stars, renowned for his unyielding resolve. Beside him stood the hospital director and other board members. As Clara Ara entered, leaning on Thorne, the room fell into an expectant silence. General Sterling approached her. He glanced towards his son, Corporal Sterling, who sat in a nearby wheelchair, a blanket draped around him. The young Marine nodded towards his father, tears welling in his eyes. The general then turned his gaze to Clara Ara. He offered not a handshake, but a salute. It was a slow, deliberate gesture. Behind him, the 20 other Marines in the room snapped to attention. "Lieutenant Commander Holloway," the general declared, his voice thick with emotion, "my son tells me you walked into hell to retrieve them." "Just doing my job, sir," Clara Ara replied, her voice quiet. "No," the general countered. "You did far more than your duty. You preserved the lives of 7 Marines. You secured intelligence that will undoubtedly save thousands more. And you accomplished all this while this institution," he gestured dismissively towards the hospital administrators, "treated you like a servant." He then turned to the hospital director, a man visibly sweating in a cheap suit. "Did you know you had a Navy Cross recipient scrubbing your floors?" The director stammered. "Our personnel files are confidential. She is a hero," the general barked. "And as of this moment, she is reactivated. The Navy wants her back. The Corps wants her back. She will not be emptying bedpans for you any longer." He then turned his attention back to Clara Ara. "If you desire it, Clara, the position of Chief Instructor at the Joint Special Operations Medical Training Center is yours. Colonel's rank." Clara looked at the general, then her gaze shifted to the corner of the room where Dr. Prescott stood. He appeared diminished, defeated. He had witnessed the entire exchange. He finally understood that the woman he had consistently belittled, the woman he had deemed slow, was a towering figure he had failed to recognize. Clara Ara released Thorne's arm. She stood on her own, a wince of pain crossing her face, but she stood tall. She met Prescott's eyes. There was no gloating, no recrimination, only a small, pitying smile. "I think I will accept that offer, General," Clara stated. "But first, I have one loose end to tie up." She walked over to the nurse's station, her old locker key still in her pocket. She pulled it out and placed it on the counter. Sarah, the young nurse who had shown her kindness, was weeping tears of joy. "Goodbye, Sarah," Clara said softly. "Don't let them push you around." She turned and walked towards the exit, accompanied by the General and Captain Thorne. The automatic doors slid open, admitting the cool night air. The sound of the Black Hawk on the roof had faded, but the silence she left behind was more profound than any engine's roar. The quiet nurse was gone. Angel 6 had returned, and as she stepped into the night for the first time in 7 years, the pain in her leg was overshadowed by the exhilarating sensation of the wind beneath her wings. The legend of Angel 6 did not conclude that night. It marked the commencement of a new chapter. Commander Rix made a complete recovery, eventually retiring to a cabin near the training center where Clara now instructed the next generation of combat medics. Dr. Prescott resigned a month later, his reputation in ruins, unable to command respect in an emergency room that was acutely aware he had publicly disparaged a legend. Clara Holloway demonstrated that heroes do not always wear capes, nor do they always run. Sometimes they limp. But when the call arises, when the sky breaks open and the rotors scream, they soar. She was no longer defined by her injury, but by the lives she steadfastly refused to abandon. Ultimately, the scars we bear are not indicators of weakness, but tangible evidence of our survival and our unwavering commitment to fighting for others.